So,
Yeah. So this is day 2. This is the final event for LiterASIAN 2025. We started in Toronto in May, and here we are ending in June here in Vancouver. So it's really a cross-Canada festival, so really proud of that. So without further ado, why don't we go to our first reader?
okay. So the first reader from our Infusion Anthology is Douglas Shimizu. So Douglas is a multimedia artist from Vancouver. So Douglas, you can come up. He grew up, sit next to me, don't be scared. He grew up in the Pole Street, Japantown area when it was still Japantown. And after finishing at UBC, he lived in Japan for a decade, teaching and studying linguistics. After returning to Vancouver, he has been feeding his curiosity by writing, drawing, painting, and playing music. So welcome.
Thank you. My name's Douglas. Thanks all for coming today. And I'm here to read my poem, April Park. And it sounds like it could be a girl's name, but it's actually about a park in April, specifically 2021. We were in the middle of the pandemic, and I had just been laid off from work. So a couple of days a week when the weather was nice, I would walk down to a neighborhood park and just read or write for a couple hours. And this is about one of those days, April Park. Sun on my face, almost warm, but the air still bites, not wanting to deny winter's slipping grip. Few trees are still bare, asleep. Crocuses bloom at their feet, trying to tickle them awake, to enjoy the still weak sun shine. Children's voices overpower busy birds beeping. Isn't it a school day? Is there still school these days? My wardrobe has yet to feel the spring. Flight jacket over fleece, over heat tech, failed to block today's gusts, still chilling me. My coffee gone cold. Shadow branches meander without destination. No load, no flow to guide them. No terrestrial master, they follow the sun, moving across the grass minute by minute. Once straight lines now curve over rock, while wooden bends are straightened by illusion. Their contortions further stretch as the hours lengthen. Flat trees are now longer than they are high. I, too, creep along the park bench, chasing that sunny spot to light my reading. A few more pages, please, before I run out of wood. Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry, it's a rotating couch here, sorry. Okay, our next reader is Donna Cito. So Donna is a Vancouver-based writer, academic, and self-taught artist who was once told that art wouldn't get her anywhere. She is drawn to urban settings, marginalized communities, layered histories, and the complexity of memory. Donna is currently working on an illustrated history book on Vancouver's Chinatown, a novel, and a book of essays. So welcome, Donna.
I kind of got lost. Sorry. Hi. So I'm reading a poem today. And so my Chinatown Vancouver book just came out last month. So it's in stores and such. But this is a poem, but it's also about Chinatown. It's actually about my grandmother, who's now 105. And she used to live in Chinatown, then she moved outside Chinatown in Oppenheimer Park. But she used to come in just kind of walk into Chinatown every day, kind of play mahjong, and she would shuffle down Hastings Street. So this is a poem about her and gentrification of Chinatown, and it's called Contrasts. And also came out of originally from the Vancouver City Poems. Fiona Lamb reached out to me a couple years ago and asked me to write a poem about Chinatown. So here it is. The chipped wooden cane of my century-old grandmother beats haphazardly against a damp asphalt, drumming to a history of broken dreams, fossilized by gray-black gum, chewed by absent ancestors. A mustached man on East Pender, a has-been accountant with a southern Chinese accent, my grandmother once mistook as her late husband, hollers across the crowd of Sunday shoppers that his gailon is fresher, greener, and crisper than his competitors on Kiefer. His calculated eyes full of adulterous ambitions, the slight upturn of his lips resembling a smile that women once swooned over during better times. On sale, Paul, the man who is not my grandfather says, bargain, 99 cents a pound. The man's village accent echoes down the paint-splattered street, sending pigeons flocking from frayed electric lines. Hushed chatter of forgotten rice patties and fermented fish, sun-dried on an old laundry line above a charcoal fire in a blackened hut no different from the one my grandmother once called her home. The tattered shoes of my grandmother's unbound feet shuffle alongside graffitied walls and broken windows, post-apocalyptic scenes of a war-torn past made present, except this is not a war, at least not the kind with guns and grenades. Hungry taste buds dance to the rhythm of fat glistening on golden roast ducks strung out on silver hooks in a butcher shop window on Gore, laminated with grease as thick as the layers of paint on its exterior. The city donated paint to fix this graffiti problem, the butcher tells my grandmother, breathing out a long, drawn-out sigh while waving his cleaver. We suffer there, we suffer here. Who did I wrong in my past life? My grandmother's crowded cataract eyes squint at the shadows that flicker to the glow of a red paper lantern, while pale-skinned tourists watch the fat drip from carcasses like raindrops cascading to the ground from rooftops. A hipster waltzes into the butcher shop in designer jeans he claims are from Value Village, but he purchased on a whim from Nordstrom. Belly full of foie gras, served on heirloom sourdough, he washes down with a $7 oat milk latte, while K-pop blasts from his $1,000 earbuds as he snaps a photo of my century-old grandmother. Authentic Chinatown Paul, the hipster says, as he shares a filtered snapshot to the world.
Our next reader is Francis Chang. So Francis is a Chinese Canadian who was born in Tokyo, grew up in Vancouver, worked in Hong Kong, and returned to Vancouver again with his family. Chang previously practiced law for more than 25 years and now focuses on writing. He is a graduate of the Writer Studio program at SFU, and his work has appeared in Ricepaper, CBC First Person, and the Fiddlehead.
So thank you very much for hosting this event. I really appreciate this event, the LiterASIAN event. It feels like coming home in many ways. And certainly one of the themes, I went to one of the panels that Wiley had facilitated last night. And I think the questions come up in terms of, who are we? What do we consider home? That seems to be an ongoing conversation, both in terms of discussion and I think a lot of the works that are being discussed. So before we go into my poem, Language Cards, I'll tell you a little bit more about where am I from, who am I. So I have a grandmother. All of my family would be described as ethnically Chinese. I have a grandmother who was born in Shanghai but then grew up in Denmark for all of her childhood and teenage years, speaking Danish and French and English and even a bit of Arabic, and then returned to Shanghai when she was 18 and had to learn Chinese over again there. My mother was born and raised in the French concession in Shanghai, going to a British boarding school. My father was born and raised in Tianjin during the Japanese occupation, so he had to learn Japanese. And they met in the US, then eventually ended up in Japan, which is where I was born. And so in some ways, and I returned, or I shouldn't say returned, I went to Hong Kong as an adult to work there altogether for 14 years, and I felt like a backward expat because I look Chinese, but I don't speak English. So in some ways, all three of my kids have been born in Hong Kong, and one of them has joked with me, whenever you talk about anything Chinese, I sound academic. I sound like it's at arm's length. So keep that in mind when I read this. I keep a faded box of Chinese language cards on the bottom shelf of the basement bookcase. The box is almost as old as me. The cover, once bright red, now faded, pale, the beginnings of dusk. The box holds over 1,000 cards, 1,000 Chinese characters, each card still relatively crisp and white. For the past 50 years, the box has been opened up less than 20 times, I'd guess. The cards were created by the Chinese language department of Yale. Traditional Chinese characters on front, Yale romanization in the back. The paper for the cards probably originated from forests in BC. Pulp sent to China to be pressed into cardboard, printed and boxed to be shipped, back to academic bookstores in North America, all available for anxious, conflicted Chinese, Canadian, American parents and students alike. My mother got those cards for me. Was I 10 or 12? Was she feeling guilty that I didn't seem Chinese at all? The idea of the cards, that if you memorize them, master them, you'll have enough for a basic everyday vocabulary. My mother left me with these cards to memorize, to figure out. But language isn't an asynchronous activity. It requires conversations, acknowledgments of mistakes, expressions of support. I haven't been able to bring myself to throw these cards away. I still had hope that I would learn how to speak, how to connect to something that, in theory, is supposed to be part of me. The cards are a museum piece now, outdated. The traditional Chinese characters of Hong Kong surely to be replaced by the simplified characters of the mainland sooner than later. The cards are obsolete technologically. Nowadays, kids use Google Translate. That's how my son learned Chinese on his own. If I don't get rid of these cards now, my kids will toss them. Will there be a moment when they look at these cards, along with the Chinese language texts and children's books, and they'll be reminded of my attempts, my failures, my sentimentality?
So next, there'll be a poem by the late Jim Wong Chu, and it'll be read by his widow, Marlene Ives. So Jim was a Canadian activist, community organizer, poet, author, editor, and historian. He is one of Canada's most celebrated literary pioneers. A community organizer known for establishing organizations highlighting Asian arts and culture in Canada, Jim was one of the founders of the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, Ricepaper Magazine, LiterASIAN Festival, and the Vancouver Asian Heritage Month Society, among many others. So welcome, Marlene. So she will be sharing Jim's words.
So this poem was found at UBC in the archives, and it had never been published. So it's called My Aunt by Jim Wong Chu. She raised me from a babe and aged in her own time. The years have taken her love and cast them into my life. She has seen 83 years in this country, but none of my education. She has shrunk into herself, and I cannot follow. We hug and kiss awkwardly, but only on holidays. Is it understood that I do love her? And he wrote that in 1978. So she was Jim's biological dad's sister. So, but for Jim, she was Mommy, right? Because they brought him here as their son, because their son had died. So I only met her once, and Jim only briefly mentioned her, and it was sort of, oh yeah, I was raised by my aunt, and that was about it. But then one day he comes down the stairs and he said, "You're going to meet my aunt." So I said, okay, does she speak English or? Nope, no English. So I said, okay. So we go in and the house is dark and gloomy, and she kind of shuffles out of her bedroom, I guess, and scowls at me. and then she looked at Jim and she said, "What did you bring her for?" Like, I can't even talk to her. You know, couldn't you have picked somebody better than her? So anyway, that was, and Jim had agreed to translate. I said, I won't go unless I know what she's saying. So she just talked in this low drone, and it just went on and on, like the words never seemed to stop. And I kept saying, what's she saying? And he'd say, oh, he's saying what a bad kid I was, how ungrateful I was. And as she berated Jim, I could see him kind of sinking into himself like this. And I just thought, I can't stand this. I can't stand seeing him abused anymore. And I thought, what can I do? So I leapt up out of my chair and I said, good God, Jim, look at the time. We have to get out of here. And I went over to her, I grabbed her hands, and I said, Chang, thank you very much for having us. And I grabbed him and I said, we're going. And nobody knew what was going on. And we got outside and Jim said, what did you do that for? And I said, because I love you. I said, you were abused like for so many years. And I said, the abuse stops. It's not going to be anymore. And he was like, that's all. He didn't even say anything. He just was kind of nodding. And so that was the only time I met her, and then she died. And so we're in Mountain View Cemetery, and it was probably the worst weather I had ever had in Vancouver. The rain was going sideways, and the wind was blowing and howling. And Jim said, that's her. Yeah, that's the only way that she would leave, would be angrily and violently. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm glad I did what I did. So I started thinking about her, like, why was she so angry? Well, it was the early 1950s. So you can imagine women had very little rights. And so I thought, did anybody ever ask her anything? What she wanted, what she would like? Of course not, right? Women had no rights. She had no money. She had no friends. She didn't know the language. And racial prejudice was rampant, right? So she would probably even be afraid to go outside. Plus, she had this rambunctious little boy running around probably outside who was very embarrassed of her because she was so gruff and she'd be yelling at him in Chinese, and of course then the kids would tease him. But the other thing was she had also lost a baby. And so she had probably had postpartum depression, which nobody even recognized back then. So that on top of everything else. And then she's supposed to look after, she gets a replacement baby. Here you go, here's another kid, right? And so I'm sure nobody ever asked her, would you like a replacement baby? You know, of course not. And that baby was illegal. So you always lived in fear that you're going to get caught, that you brought a kid into the country illegally. So, you know, he was embarrassed how their house smelled, the way she was, and she was just so angry, and I thought, who did she take her anger out on? Certainly not her husband, because he held all the purse strings, he had all the rights. So she took it out on that poor little boy who just needed a hug, right?
That's it. Oh, thank you. But thank you for sharing that, Marlene, and for all you've done for Jim. Okay, our next writer is Sambrita Nepal. Sambriti works at an environmental organization by day and writes creative nonfiction and children's book when everyone in her household has gone to bed. Her nonfiction writing has appeared in Ricepaper Magazine and the second season of the Living Hyphen podcast. Her children's writing has been longlisted in the Cannes Cap Writing for Children competition and won her a place in the Writers Union of Canada's BIPOC Writers Connect mentorship program. She was born in Kathmandu, Nepal, and lives on Coach Salish territories in Vancouver, BC.
Thanks, everyone. This is a piece called A God or Two Could Help. The words were waiting to be needed. They gush out of me, and I'm left wondering if I believe in a God, or 3 million of them, after all. For so long, I had run from them, afraid of their hold on me. I had run until I found myself, age 19, lying on the floor of an apartment in Vancouver. I'm crying over a boy. My eyes are puffy, my lips are chapped, and my throat is hoarse. I'm lonely in the way only a first heartbreak can make someone feel. I plead, He Bhagwan, Sakti Dinus, O Lord, grant me strength. My mother, her sisters, and my grandmother asked for strength all the time. The occasion didn't matter. Parents' house in Kathmandu, when an afternoon downpour and the prospect of a wet, muddy rickshaw ride home was an inconvenience that required the assistance of the divine. They whispered it quietly at a family gathering when the arrival of estranged family members brought up generations of conflict. My grandmother said it loudly during a lull in the conversation, as if she needed something to ground herself, and only the gods could do that for her. Everyone needed Bhagwan. My father, attempting to lighten the mood, would ask if a traffic jam, a regular occurrence in the narrow, overcrowded streets of my hometown, really required one or more gods to intervene. "Do you really want to bother a god with that?" he'd say. He'd laugh, confident his joke would land despite the frequent repetition. That was his strength. It wasn't ever reassuring to my mother. Sitting anxiously in the passenger seats of my parents' car, she would rummage through her purse to find something that would provide momentary comfort in this unmanageable situation. She'd fish out a cough drop or wrap herself even more tightly in her paisley-patterned shawl. Perhaps that was Parvati acting at the moment to assure her that they would get to their destination soon enough. The incantation wasn't one I relied on. What could these gods do for me? I knew the expectations that came with being raised a woman by parents practicing a conservative Brahmin Hinduism. I didn't ask Ganesh for strength, as my mother told me, aged only 11, that my first period meant my body was changing and that I should make sure boys didn't look at me. I didn't ask Krishna for help as she sat me down on the carpet in her bedroom 3 years later, her phone's handset still warm from a long conversation with her cousin, whose son had dared to marry someone non-Nepali. "If you ever do that, I'll never speak to you again," she said, her eyes ablaze. Staring at the pink flowers on her bedsheets to avoid eye contact, I didn't think there was a god anywhere who could douse that flame for me. I thought only about never becoming the match that lit it. In an instant, I became good at keeping secrets. I didn't ask any gods for guidance on the evening I left Kathmandu to go to university in Vancouver. We didn't know it then, but I wouldn't return to Nepal again. As she prayed with a fervor I had never seen before, I sat beside my mother in her puja room, a fragrant marigold garland around my neck, red tika on my forehead, and a knot of relief and sorrow in my stomach. My right hand's fingertips were stained red from the red and orange abir and sindur we used during the puja. They would remain that color for a few days, traveling with me across the Pacific Ocean. I stared down at the murtis of gods and goddesses in front of me, daring them to appear and punish me. I was convinced this was my farewell to pujas. And yet the words found me all those years later on my cold vinyl floor. After that first encounter, they would find me at other times. They scared me with their brazenness, the audacity to make an appearance uninvited. I kept pushing them away, but they knew I needed them. For the women who raised me, being a woman was dukkha. They lived in multi-generational homes with their in-laws who treated them poorly and expected perfection from them. Their lives were weighed down by the pressure of being subservient daughters-in-law, generous wives, and strict mothers. They were instructed to give up or scale down careers, conduct countless religious ceremonies, and raise children who did the same. Despite this, they were pragmatic about their suffering. Long conversations recounting the hurt they had endured often ended with one of them saying, "Esteo, this is how it is. Que garne, what can we do?" There were only two things they thought they could control: their children and their prayers. With their requests to the gods, they were showing me where to turn for comfort. They taught me I would need strength. To their horror, I found enough of it to leave. That my mother threatened me as a teenager makes sense now. She was scared for me. She was scared of me. She may have asked for the gods' help, but nothing turned up. Her threats were the only way she knew how to reach me. I've been estranged from these women for 8 years. In this time, we have grieved deaths, illnesses, and natural disasters. Now, in a pandemic that has hit Nepal particularly hard, my aunt has died. Each time a tragedy has occurred, our sorrow has been a momentary closing in the chasm between us. There are short phone calls during which tears flow freely and silences are long and painful. The moments will pass and the distance will return. Grieving an estrangement relies on imagined interactions. There are no communal rituals or conversations with the people who knew my aunt best. I fill the void of lost time and missed opportunities with daydreams. I'm sure it's not always accurate, but it's all I have. Using all those afternoons in my grandparents' house as a blueprint, I dream up what my aunt and I would say to one another if we sat in a room together. A few minutes into our conversation, her booming laugh would bring her sisters and my mother into the room, wanting to join in on the fun. We would talk about the fashionable kurtas of the day and trade lipsticks, seeing which shade looked best on us. A funny family anecdote would get retold, each of us shouting over the others to tell our versions. The stories are long now. New details have been added at each retelling. Inevitably, the conversation would transition to family dynamics. Old wounds and disappointments would resurface. Someone in the room would bring up dukkha and ask where my aunt sought solace. She'd say that she found it in puja, in Bhagwan, doing the things she had to do. Esteo. Today, there isn't an altar or a murti near my home. I close my eyes. I ask for strength, for me and for the women I love and resent. I'm closer to them than I had thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next reader is Klaus Tan. Klaus is a professional writer, award-winning filmmaker, and jack of all trades creative of Asian European ancestry. Tan writes in a wide spectrum of genres, from fantasy to sci-fi, and mediums for the silver screen to game consoles, all focusing on an introspective look into conflicts of perspectives in the self. Much of his work is informed by global arts and experience he's learned as a world traveler, researcher, and journalist. He's born, brought up in, and based in British Columbia. Welcome.
Thank you. As mentioned there, this story in particular is informed by my luck in being able to travel so much, and as well as the misadventures that involve that. So please listen to Can I Help You, Sir? My clothes are my first line of defense. Matching the local style is an easy form of security, safe from prying eyes and too many questions. Dressing up like this is not paranoia when it deals with an actual threat. No one would be able to pick me out as an Audi right away. It's added protection. It would be dumb not to wear a bulletproof vest in an active conflict, right? On second thought, that idea doesn't sit well with me. Do I really feel so threatened by a shopping mall that I would consider it like walking through a war zone? Can I help you, sir? These words frighten me. Standing in front of me is a young woman dressed in a department store's uniform. Her clothing and the store itself seems more suited for the first-class cabin of an overnight flight than a shopping center in a suburb. Her outfit matches the high-end business fashion that flight attendants around the world wear, evoking similar questions about its design practicality. A uniform project to fit the most luxurious cultural standards, only giving the barest lip service to cultural identifiers. The extravagant goods around her look like products in an airplane catalog. Watches that tell you how much money you've lost per hour, and cents that tell people you have means without even looking. The most expensive items you have ever seen, available even when you're far away from Paris and London. Things people globally seem to want, and which they desire to afford more than anything else. The building has the unmistakable feel of air conditioning commonly found in such handcrafted environments. It hurts bitterly to recognize that the comfort of AC feels more familiar to me than this whole country's ecosystem. The young woman's smile reads like a professional habit rather than a genuine expression. Is she questioning me because it's how they greet their customers, or did she pick me out because I seem suspicious? Does she work by commission? Do they even allow people to work by commissions in this country. Her expression betrays nothing but friendliness. Regardless of why she chose to spoke to me, she's my problem now. I dread this deeply. I cannot bring myself to answer. While I fully understand her language, there is no way of answering her without giving myself away. And yet, answering all would be just as awkward and even suspicious. Whether on commission or not, I know that staff in this country can be overbearing to a fault. If I'm not straightforward with them, they would not leave me alone. If I'm straightforward with them, they may never leave me alone. I'm trapped. If I tried to fit in more, would this have happened? I tried copying their mannerisms before, albeit only briefly. On the one hand, it felt like relearning how to ride a bike, clumsiness and all. On the other hand, it felt wrong. Where copying clothes is necessary, copying mannerism is deceit. You wear clothes to fit the environment. Adapting to the local weather, following traditions, and cultural opinions on fashions are somewhat reasonable justifications to changing one's style. Mannerisms are something you grow into and develop from habit. There's a difference between playing soldier with children and faking to get a veteran's discount. I did not want to be a walking parody of the people around me. Even without mannerisms, I look the part, and that can be a problem. My clothes are my first line of defense because they make people comfortable. Think that we're the same. However, this also means that people would become comfortable enough to inspect me closely. Inspecting me closely means that they would start pointing out all that makes me unlike them. The more similar you are, the more vocal people would be about your differences. But if I don't look the part, they would decide I'm not one of them long before I even notice them. Either way, it never takes long for people to realize that I'm raised differently. It's a mistake to think someone like me could get away from this issue completely. I'm always set apart. Even if I do respond in a local language, I'm doomed. She will know that I'm not like her. And while the language is second nature to me, my tongue is molded differently than the locals. I can speak it and be understood easily, but it marks me. I was never ashamed of how different my tongue was, so long as I was understood by other speakers. It was fine. But the problem lies in the fact that my tongue has become a symbol of status. In fact, tongues touched by many nations have become popular in this country. Many of the rich and famous come from multicultural backgrounds which afforded them these tongues similar to mine. The country has acquired such a palate for these tongues that even those who never left their homeland, try to cater to these new tastes. Is it wrong if the voices that are trying to copy were originally trying to copy them? I hear more of these foreign-sounding tongues singing, preaching, and leading than the tongues I hear on this country's streets. They had manufactured their own tongues to appear touched by lands abroad, all to build followers. My voice sounds rich to their ears. For some, my voice sounds like a demand. They think I use my voice to signify that I demand respect and will reward those who swear fealty. Many times I have been hounded in marketplaces by people begging to hear my voice. They want my tongue to feed their bellies with a simple yes to their demands. They follow the curves of my every word like directions to their deepest dreams. They make offers like they want to make a trade for my tongue. Similarly, I worry this sales associate might try to wait on me like a servant if I speak. The thought unnerves me. I'm horrified by what people would do for a voice. I'm not rich. I do not grant wishes. I do not want power over anyone. In reality, when I visit my family's homeland, I want to spend time with them. I seek to enrich my connection with my family. I want to help my family when I can. I want to learn and respect parts of my family I hardly ever see. A reunion necessitates only recognition, not demands. To demand power over any random person on the street is not the reason I go out, let alone home for in an area that could be considered another home away from home for me. I started to think of voices who use their mark status to use people, especially to take advantage of people in need. I want to know the sales associate's tongue. I want her to know mine. I want to feel how both our tongues are the same yet shaped differently. Where do our tongues contact comfortably? Where do we feel the tension that sets us apart? What experience have seasoned our tastes? I want to be able to exchange stories and jokes, not social mobility. I went off on my own so I could be part of the local crowd. Am I allowed to be part of this country? And yet I have not spoken because I've heard her tongue. Her expression is, it's the last paragraph. Okay. Her expression is worried, like she's burdened by all possibilities of why I haven't spoken. She studies me as much as I study her. We're both puzzled. Does she know those who have demanding voices? Does she worry about her own tongue? Is her uniform a line of defense? Is AC a comfort for her or just something manufactured? What are we supposed to say?
Thank you. Okay. All right. Our last reader from Immersion is Chang Wang. The Wan Changming grew up in an isolated village, started to learn the English alphabet in Shanghai at age 19, and published monographs on translation before leaving China. With a Canadian PhD in English, Wan lives in Vancouver, where he co-edits Poetry Pacific with Alan Wan. Writing credits include 16 chapbooks, 12 pushcart nominations for poetry, 3 for fiction, besides appearances in Best of the Best Canadian Poetry, Best New Poems Online, and other publications across 51 countries. Over 2,129 publications, so that is a lot, okay? A poetry judge for Canada's 44th National Magazine Awards, Wan began writing and publishing fiction in 2022. His debut novel, Detaching, is a silver romance. The tuner and short story collection Flashbacks are all available at Amazon, and his duology editing is due out in 2026. So welcome.
Although I write a lot in English, I'm always nervous whenever it comes to speaking because I have a speaking problem. Part of the reason is because I don't speak even Chinese. I don't speak much, even in my mother tongue. I'm a very private and introvert person. And the more important reason has to do with the fact that I didn't begin to learn English until I was 19 in Shanghai. As a country boy, my classmates and instructors laughed at my village accent. So that hurts me a lot. So since then, I got a speaking problem, especially when it comes to speaking English. So I'm sweating a lot. Okay. Anyway, the poem I'm going to read today has actually a very, very long background story. But briefly speaking, it all began when I met the devotee of this piece. Actually, she's my first crush when I was a young high school student. At a dinner party in my native town in China in 2019. After 42 years of separation without knowing each other whereabouts. So as a result of this re-encounter, I have written and published more love poems than anybody I ever know of. This is a great personal achievement because by then I wrote every kind of sub-genre of poetry. I had written about more than 2,000 poems already and published at least 1,000 already. But I could never write a single love line. I said, because I'm too old, because old guys don't have any passion anymore. So I understand. But this is a great personal achievement because of her. I've written 1,000 poems. I wrote more poems than anybody know of. I know there is a famous Chinese poet called Yu Guang. Yu Guangzhong, a very famous Taiwanese poet. And once he bragged about the fact that he wrote 100 Chinese poems to his wife. And he was, of course, an MFA from Iowa writing shop. And he's one of the greatest poets contemporary in Chinese literature. And I said, oh, I will emulate him. I'll try to write more than him. So I write at least 120 or 150, and not privately, but get most of them published already. So this is only one of them, of course. And to articulate my feelings for her and reenact our relationship in more detail, I tend to prose writing in English. This is something I have never done before in my life. So within past 3 years, I completed 5 novels, and three of them are published. And I have completed another 60 short stories, and about 40 of them have already been published or accepted for publication. So I think, oh, this is really amazing. I know that how come that as an old guy, I could still fall in love with somebody. I could still write something about love. And I even get an editor-in-chief in Los Angeles cried. She told me, she was 55 or something. She told me, I would never expect you to write something like that. And you made me cry. Oh, I felt very good about it. I said, I cried too.
Touch you? Make sure you're not a robot.
Okay.
You feel real. Okay.
I'm too excited. Because my wife's not here.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, a lot of stories, of course. So a lot of stories. I cannot. Okay. By the way, I would just read my post right now. It's very short, so I could afford a couple of minutes to elaborate on the background. So this poem was written during the peak of the pandemic, because I was afraid of, because I have a heart problem. I thought I could die any moment because of the COVID-19. So I wrote it with my tears, actually. So in this one, I want to honor her as both my muse and soulmate, what is called. Although, ironically, she's actually an English illiterate. She doesn't speak a single word of English, but I wrote everything about her for her, to her in English. That's part of the irony. So the title is All That I've Loved Most Dearly for Helena Chi Hong. When I die at another ant-like moment like this, no human crowds would gather to mourn my loss. Nor would anybody really notice my departure, much less shed tears, even if because of the wind. Yet I'm sure trees will shake off their leaves, horses will stampede, raindrops will taste somewhat salty, hills and mountains will all murmur in a muted voice. Above all, Zhuhai, a Chinese city, coastal city, Zhuhai will weep under sagging clouds, for it well knows there will be no more human soul on this planet trying to connect with the city as far as from beyond the Pacific, so closely and constantly, with its immediate spirit fingers caressing every synapse of the neighborhood, the very building where you dwell, while poetry cannot help feeling empty, as if its heart were hollowed by my absence. That's all. Thank you all, and have a great Canada Day ahead. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.